Hello and welcome to an India Today special broadcast coming to you from the strife-torn Sri Lankan capital, Colombo. I'm Gaurav Sawant. This is a city that's on the edge. Tempers are rising. The images that we are about to show you on your television screen. On the one hand, you will see Sri Lankan Air Force personnel who've now been deployed to assist the police in Sri Lanka at various petrol pumps. Tempers are running high. People are losing their patience. The other picture that you see on your television screen, how this crisis, this economic crisis in Sri Lanka has impacted the common people. We visited a family in Colombo, on the outskirts of Colombo, and how this well-to-do family, the wife is a psychologist, the husband is an IT firm head honcho, but even they have had to cut corners to make both ends meet. We are standing right in front of the Bank of Ceylon, but the currency of Sri Lanka, it's down and out. Now, when you just compare, for example, compare it to the Indian currency. For 1,000 Indian rupees, at one point of time, just about 6 to 8 months ago, you'd get 2,000 Sri Lankan. But as of now, you can get anything between 4,500 and 5,000 Sri Lankan. And that's just one part of the story. Prices of all essential commodities, food items, they are actually going through the roof. And people are saying enough is enough. Elections on the 20th to elect a new president of Sri Lanka. 4 candidates as of now. Of course, nomination is tomorrow, but 4 candidates as of now. Will they be able to end? Because massive protests are also planned in Sri Lanka, and we'll talk about that in greater detail during the course of the next half hour. We will have voices from Colombo joining us on the broadcast. But first, let me bring you our top story, the problems that people are facing in Sri Lanka through the eyes of Linda, Charles and their family.
So it's difficult. I can only make chutney and rice. That's the special.
As she rustles up an early dinner for the family, Linda Christopher's son, a psychologist and a mother of 3, is extremely worried. The crisis in Sri Lanka has had a direct impact on the family kitchen.
I have to really think and cook for every meal. And even if we have the provisions filled at home, it's pointless because we have to have a gas cylinders, which is impossible to get one. So we have to really cut down the variety which I make usually. My lifestyle has changed, and I think most of the women are facing a bit borderline depression, I can say that.
Her husband Charles, an IT firm director, walks into the kitchen but is disappointed to see the shrinking size of the meal.
Look at the oil price, it's 3,000. It was 800 last year and it's 3,000 per liter. Even if I cook special food, I have to check for the gas. And it's again
don't have to pay anything less?
Nothing. You have to buy, because chicken has also gone up to 1,300, right, per kg.
Prices of essential commodities, food and vegetables have literally gone through the roof in Sri Lanka in the past several months. For example, in the past 6 months, rice has shot up from 95 rupees a kg to over 250 rupees a kg. Sugar again from 95 to more than 350. Cooking oil from 700 to 1300 rupees. Bus fare for the first 3 kilometers has gone up from 10 rupees to 40 rupees. To cope, Linda and Charles have reduced the quantity of food they buy and eat. The number of dishes have also come down on the table, and this is impacting the peace of mind of families.
Every day we have 3 to 4 hours power cuts, and it's really hard for the children, the schools, everything has been affected by the power cuts actually. That is the main issue, the fuel and the gas cylinders.
With the problem in supply of gas and long power cuts, food items also cannot be stored in the refrigerator. Because of the fuel crisis, fishermen are unable to venture out to sea and get fresh fish, or farmers are unable to supply fresh vegetables. In Sri Lanka now, people are beginning to feel the pinch. Prices of virtually everything have gone through the roof. Flour, rice, pulses, meat, fish, chicken. Prices are extremely high. There's also a problem of storage, electricity problems, gas problems, and this is impacting family lives here. It's impacting lives of people, and they're worried, when will things improve? Many fear things will become worse before they get better. The crisis is also impacting Linda's children. Because of the fuel crisis, they're unable to go to school, and power cuts mean online education is also severely impacted.
Because of the fuel crisis, I had to attend through online classes, so I can't concentrate that well in online classes. And also because of the electricity crisis, I had to keep on switching devices because the power might go at any time during my classes.
Linda's husband Charles is the director of an IT firm in Sri Lanka. His 7-seater car is stranded due to lack of fuel, and he's just bought a cycle and a motorcycle to remain mobile.
Price of this bicycle, it used to be like 15,000. It has gone up for 70.
My God. And I also noticed you've bought a scooty.
Yes. Once I get the petrol, if I get, because nowadays the petrol prices are high, and even if you are able to pay, it's very difficult to get it. So I've been waiting in queues for 3-4 days. I have slept in my car for 3 days. So very tough.
Charles and Linda, despite being much better off, have been forced to cut corners as the crisis lingers on. They are hoping a solution would be found soon. These hardships aren't just being faced by Charles and Linda. This is the story of a large number of people across Sri Lanka. It's not restricted just to any one section or one segment of people. While they have been saving for a rainy day, but it's literally pouring miseries, and their currency now carries little value. They are hopeful the leadership, whichever leadership emerges, will be able to provide a solution. But that, in Sri Lanka's context, is easier said than done. But then, as they say, when you live, it's hope that carries the day forward. With cameraman Kripal Singh in Colombo, Sri Lanka, Gaurav Sawant for India Today. And there's breaking news that's coming in. The Inter-University Students Federation in Sri Lanka, they've planned massive protests in Colombo tomorrow, 19th of July. That's also the day when the candidates will file their nomination for the post of President of Sri Lanka that's been lying vacant since Gotabaya Rajapaksa first fled the presidential palace and then the country. En route, he initially went to Singapore. Now Singapore's asked him to not stay there longer, according to media reports here. But nominations will be filed for the presidential polls, and the Inter-University Students Federation, they've asked a number of trade unions and other civil society bodies to join their protest. They say their work is half done. They won a battle, but they still have a war ahead. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has gone, but they say the same ruling elite continue in Sri Lanka and they want a complete change. Is that even possible? What happens tomorrow when the candidates file their nomination, and Ranil Wickremesinghe is one of them? There's also Sajid Premdasa and Dallas Anuprema Parema, and let me quickly bring in our guests on the broadcast for more on the story. Joining me now on this India First special are Aylan Kadir Gamar. He's an economist and senior lecturer at the University of Jaffna. Also joining me on this broadcast is Chamit Vijayasundara, who is national organizer of the SJB and a special representative of the opposition. But Aylan Kadir Gamar, let me come to you first, sir. What do you make of the protests that are scheduled for the 19th of July, and the Students' Federation wants all civil society bodies and trade unions to come forward?
Yeah, now Sri Lanka has had waves of protests, as you would have seen. for the better part of this year. And every time the protests have been mounting. The protests started in March, and then by April it had become much stronger, also with trade unions joining them. That culminated in the May 9th protest, which led to the resignation of Mahinda Rajapaksa and the appointment of Ranil Wickremesinghe. They tried to diffuse the protest through the appointment of Ranil Wickremesinghe. But again, the last 2 weeks, we saw very valiant protests on July 9th and then July 13th. And at all these protests, the student movement has been in the forefront. They have been the most militant, and they have carried the day. So it is likely to be very strong protests tomorrow. But this has also been called at short notice, so it's to be seen whether the masses of people which have supported the students in the last 2 protests would turn up on those numbers. But regardless, I think if Ranil Wickremesinghe is made president on Wednesday, and that will be a deal between the president's political party, the president who has run away, and his political party, and Ranil Wickremesinghe, because Ranil Wickremesinghe absolutely has no political or social base.
Okay.
Then it will likely that there will be more protests that happen after that. So the protest movement has been deciding the direction of this country.
So you're saying that the protest tomorrow will only perhaps be the precursor to larger protests that may happen 21st July onwards. Chamit Vijay-Sindhura, do you agree with this assessment? The acting president has promulgated emergency once again. The notification came out late last night. While the Bar Council here, the Bar Association, has opposed it and said civil rights should not be curtailed. But what do you see happen over the course of the next 48 to perhaps 72 hours, sir?
So what I believe is, like you said, the emergency law has been put yesterday by the acting president, which has no base at all, because there are a lot of youth which was involved in chasing away the former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. Not only youth, the people in general, as your report said, people are suffering, and they can't get their ends meet. So people are actually suffering, and they really want some change. But after Mahinda Rajapaksa left his post as Prime Minister, Ranil Wickremesinghe should have actually had some consensus with the opposition parties, but he didn't do that. He just went and took his oaths as the Prime Minister. So from tomorrow, a lot of protesters are going to protest, and we hear that the army has been ordered to, I don't know how far this is true, ordered to shoot people as well. So a lot of protesters, what we speak to a lot of protesters and youngsters who are getting involved in tomorrow's protest, and even day after, they are going to, on the day of the vote, they are going to protest outside the parliament. So what we hear is armed forces are given the order to shoot at sight as well. So I hear a lot of protesters are going to parliament with white flags. So the current acting president has put people are actually on social media. They are very vocal. They are getting, because in parliament there's a majority of Sri Lanka people's the Mahinda Rajapaksa's party. They have close to 2/3 majority. So people want the change, and they are forcing these MPs to make the right decision, because over 1 million people came to Colombo.
People are forcing the MPs to make the right decision. That's a very pertinent point you make there, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, but you know, again the question that is being asked, because Ranil Wickremesinghe says you cannot have fascists, and this is his words to the effect that fascists are trying to derail Sri Lanka's return to normalcy or words to that effect on the streets. What's happening? Those long queues for petrol still remain, and long queues where people are suffering. They've been in the queue for days. The Sri Lankan Air Force has also been called out along with the army. Today at one of the petrol pumps, a senior Air Force officer actually had to argue with protesters, with people who were in the queue to push them back. Now there is rationing of fuel happening. Acting President Ranil Wickremesinghe says diesel, to an extent, it's been sorted out. The issue of gas has been sorted out. Petrol likely to be sorted out by the 21st of July. But is that actually the case on ground? We'll talk to our experts about that. But before that, we bring you this ground report.
The lines are long and tempers high. Fuel is the biggest flashpoint in a nation reeling under shortage.
As the political temperature soars in Sri Lanka, so is the anger on the streets as long queues remain at petrol pumps. The Air Force has now been roped in to ensure calm is maintained. Other security forces are being roped in to help the army and the police. Like right now at this petrol pump where we are, the Sri Lankan Air Force has also been roped in. And let's now show you the long queues and arguments that are virtually taking place every few minutes.
Petrol is priced at a shattering ₹540 per litre, and diesel costs 510 rupees per litre. Even at these skyrocketing prices, there is not enough for all.
Now some fuel has come into Sri Lanka. We are told this is an IOC, an Indian Oil Corporation petrol pump, and the information is that some fuel has come in from India. But there are major restrictions on how much fuel an individual can take. That too is now written down here. For motorcycles, fuel worth 1,500 rupees. For three-wheelers, 2,500 rupees. For cars, 7,000 rupees. That's the amount of fuel that is given out.
India has been helping Sri Lanka battle its fuel crisis, bringing some respite to Lankans.
I'm waiting since yesterday.
Okay.
Yeah, since yesterday I'm waiting.
So there is some improvement. Those 5-day queues are no longer there.
Yeah, it's getting slowly better and better.
Where is the fuel coming from?
Fuels are coming from, from the news, the TV channel news, they are saying the fuels are coming from India.
Okay.
That's what we know.
So which means when fuel comes in, this problem would be a little less.
Yeah, getting better and better, slowly getting better.
As anger flares up, Sri Lanka's Air Force has been roped in to assist police in keeping things under control. With economic revival uncertain in the short term, Sri Lankans are staring at a long, gloomy future.
Major problem that remains at this point of time is food inflation, the price of essential commodities. Of course, petrol price is also extremely high. It's gone up from to almost 500 rupees a litre. Diesel also. Now again, people are hoping with more fuel coming in, the government would be able to bring down prices of food and fuel. And then this rising tension, they would be able to control it at least to some extent. With cameraman Kripal Singh in Colombo, Sri Lanka, Gaurav Sawant for India Today. So this special broadcast comes to you from Colombo. I have the central bank behind me. Power to the people beyond Parliament. This is what the protesters are saying. You have the central bank on one side, you have the Bank of Ceylon on the other side, and the protesters, the central point, which often is called the Tahrir Square of Colombo, right ahead of me. But it's dark there. It's likely that a large number of protesters will get there tomorrow. But let me once again bring in Ahlan Kadir Gamar for more on the protests that are likely to happen and what Acting President Ranil Wickremesinghe said today. Mr. Kadir Gamar, you had the Acting President who said The petrol issue will be sorted out to an extent by the 21st. Diesel has been secured. Gas problem to an extent sorted out. Is that actually the truth on ground, sir?
No, I don't think it's going to move that smoothly at all. I think these are false promises ahead of the election in Parliament to provide some semblance of confidence, but this is not going to work with the people. Obviously, people want these supplies to come through. They expect that of any government and the state. At the same time, the people of Sri Lanka have been greatly politicized over the last number of months. Everybody is talking about their economic future, the future of their country, the role of their politicians in destroying this country. So that cannot be bought over just by providing some supplies of fuel. What will be necessary is long-reaching changes in the country, the kind of economy and the kind of democracy that we want to build. And that is where actually the change has to start with the presidency. The people have chased away one president, but the bane of our problems is this office of the executive president. So much power consolidated in one individual. So that has to be abolished, and that has also been a demand. But the moment the opening comes, now we are seeing the politicians just trying to get a hold of this office. So the protests will also mount until this kind of concentration of power is also abolished and power is given to the people.
So power given to the people, what does that mean? Will a decision be taken in the parliament, or will a decision be taken on the streets? Is this becoming the Tahrir Square of Sri Lanka? But let me also quickly bring in Mr. Vijay Sundara, where I want to ask you, when the president, the acting president says power cuts, they have reduced, he says in May, the country was bankrupt. 5 to 6 hour long power cuts reduced to 3 hours now. Fertilizers, that problem is being addressed. It has been addressed to an extent. He's also saying paddy farmers, those who had less than 2 acres of land, their loans have been cancelled. Is Sri Lanka actually on the slow road to recovery, or do you anticipate that starting tomorrow, situation could once again take, God forbid, a violent turn with protesters once again on the streets?
I think what the current president is doing is he's basically trying to bribe the people of his country by telling the situation will be better once his position is secured. So he's just bribing, trying to bribe, like how he's bribing the SLPP members in parliament by putting the emergency law and securing their houses. He has promised to give houses when our people are suffering, when they don't have the basic needs. I mean, children are dying because they don't have medicines in our hospitals. But the current president, the interim president, he has promised houses to MPs of the ruling party. So I think these are all bribes. So and he's trying to bribe the people of this country by spreading lies.
Okay. Now, when you speak to people on ground, and we've been interacting with a number of youngsters, university students, fresh graduates, those who are now, they've just started working, and they say when they went inside the presidential palace, they saw the stark difference in the lives that President Gotabaya Rajapaksa was living, the lives of other big people, the rulers of this country, and the lives that the common people are living, the problems that they are facing. And they say it's high time that there is some equality in the real sense of the word. And that is why when the Students' Federation, and this is an organization, each time it calls for a movement, a large number of people actually turn up, the civil society, trade unions, others. Tomorrow, they've called for a massive protest. Will it actually be lax on the streets as some fear? Is there merit in the opposition saying that the army has been given shoot at sight orders? That's extremely scary. India Today will be reporting from ground zero when these students once again take to the streets. Of course, the acting president has just in the past 24 hours promulgated emergency. He's said that people should follow. That's what the armies and that's what the security forces are saying. Follow rules. There cannot be anarchy. Will the parliament decide or will the street decide? I leave you with that thought. To my guests, many thanks for joining me on this India Today special broadcast from Colombo. News and updates continue on India Today. Stay with us.